Picture this. You die horribly in the line of duty. Your body is destroyed and your mind evaporated. But there is enough of you to be rebuilt. An unholy fusion of meat and metal sent back to continue the job that got you killed in the first place. You are now property. You have horrible questions about your new existence. You do not understand what you are. Why you? And why am I seeing clips of RoboCop? I'm not talking about RoboCop. Okay, you've returned from Vietnam and the experience has left you hollowed. Your ability to interact with others has been irreparably damaged, and it leads to awkward, intense social interactions that's also not right. You're a machine protecting a woman being hunted by another machine made by the same people who made you. As you spend more time around her, you gradually begin to understand humanity more, and I've made it pretty clear the original Universal Soldier is not a particularly interesting film to talk about. It's a mishmash of reheated 80s ideas that have been left too long and started sprouting 90s mold. The future has a bad attitude. I like Universal Soldier. It's enjoyable, trashy, part action, part sci-fi, part horror, starring these part men, part machines played by the incredible Van Damme and the ever underrated Dolph Lundgren.
Well, that's the spirit, soldier!
Over time, though, the series would be stripped back into something strange, almost primordial, undergoing an alchemical process that would leave us at a very different place than when we started, with the basic components still intact.
That's the spirit, soldier!
So, here's the plan. Clear your calendar. Go watch the original. It's pretty good on its own, and it's foundational for the rest of this. There's a 2 and a 3. I didn't watch them, and they don't have Van Damme or Lundgren in them anyway, and are not relevant to this discussion. The Return, Van Damme is back, but Dolph is still out, and this isn't all that great anyway.
Guard this.
It's skippable, but there's a pretty good Michael J. White villain performance, and there's some Goldberg action. The next ones ignore these 3 anyway.
I hate that guy.
Regeneration and Day of Reckoning are the meat and potatoes here. They're weird and existentially frightening. Okay, meet back here in around 5 to 7 hours. Go. What jumps out to me most about Universal Soldier Regeneration is the flipping of what would be negatives in other film into part of its bleak, oppressive atmosphere. Direct-to-video films starring Hollywood action heroes popular in the 80s and 90s, derogatorily referred to as the geezer teaser, are often filmed in Eastern European countries due to the tax incentives they offer, keeping production costs down so that more money can be allocated to getting the geezer. This is the observable bulk of Steven Seagal's career.
Two?
And she's my sister, Mia.
What's happening?
And Bruce Willis did a lot of these in quick succession ahead of his medical issue-induced retire in 2022. The actor in question is usually never shot with any of the other actors, indicating a quick, isolated shoot away from the main production at their own convenience, with prominent poster space despite the limited screen time to ensure your dad rents it on Apple TV. Welcome, sloppers, to the Springfield Slop Meet. Regeneration has all these hallmarks. It's shot in Bulgaria, but instead of doubling for the Middle East or Mexico or an alien planet or the US, the film is set in Ukraine, with the bulk of the action taking place in a disused steel mill, doubling as the Chernobyl nuclear plant. The protagonist and antagonist, respectively, of the original film, Jean-Claude Van Damme as Luke Devereaux and Dolph Lundgren as Andrew Scott, are kept separate from the main action for much of the film until the final third, giving the implication we've been led on. The plot devices keeping them away is that Luke is undergoing rehabilitation therapy to integrate him back into society, whereas Andrew is a clone of the original, confused about who or what he is, only knowing that he has to kill as he's been programmed to, spending a lot of time doing scary Blade Runner stuff.
Are you a punctual and reliable person?
I order you to sit.
You know how to put every minute of your time to good purpose. You often think about humankind.
Luke is kidnapped by the US government and deployed to Chernobyl once it becomes clear they can't handle Andrew or the next generation Unisol, the main muscle of the terrorist forces. Action films often indulge in a little myth-making about their star, adding an extra layer of meta and blending it with the actor's public persona. Early Arnold films feature him as a bodybuilder.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming.
Or as this strange, larger-than-life foreigner who hasn't yet understood America's customs.
I get the same feeling, so I'm coming day and night.
There's several different movies about Van Damme entering martial arts tournaments and winning by kicking really good. Above the Law starts with a PowerPoint presentation about how Seagal is really cool, almost certainly the same presentation he used to pitch the film. This is rightfully one of the major criticisms flung at guys like The Rock and Ryan Reynolds, that their carefully curated characters Dwayne Johnson and Reynolds play in their day to day media appearances being identical to their on screen appearances as well. Revamping and rebranding this image is common practice too. Post governorship Arnold outings often have him in a position of power and or take a very the old man still got it approach. Outside of the more interesting and unique roles he's been settling into in his older age,
I'm old, not obsolete.
JCVD has Van Damme as a fictional version of himself, reckoning with where his career is at this stage. Through this lens, Regeneration builds upon this by having this old guy dragged kicking and screaming back into the only thing he knows how to actually do: hurt people. Okay, parking the vague, possibly reaching metaphor, what's the literal arc across the movie? What's actually happening? The military will never let these men rest. They bring them back from the dead, they'll drag them from their homes, they'll clone them, they'll fight forever with their identities completely destroyed. By stripping down the plot and ideas to bare components, like what's happening to the characters, and utilizing the power of low budget DTV filmmaking to its greatest extent, we're able to better communicate the film's ideas. The simple, thin outer shell can be chewed away to reveal the dense, depressing, gooey center. The last 30 minutes are sublime, possibly some of the best action of Van Damme's career, as he single handedly uses stealth and skill to rip these poor guys to pieces. Because of the geezer teaser stereotypes, you're not expecting the Van Damme action to be this good, and you're not expecting this much of it. It's a rarity for an action film, a genuine slow burn in terms of physicality because we're holding it all for later. And when Luke and Andrew reunite, decades after Luke killed him for a second time, Lundgren is really fucking good, playing it confused and unaware. He recognizes Luke, but has no context for him. A big part of the first movie is that Andrew thinks he's still in Vietnam, later revealed to be faking it. But did these guys ever leave Vietnam? Here they are, far from home, forced to fight a conflict they don't understand by people who don't care for or respect them and treat them as property. Andrew is killed for the third time in a row by the same guy. Luke also kills the NGO after another great fight scene and completes his mission, more aware now of his status as a tool to be used. It's bleak, and he's not happy about it. I'd like to briefly mention a recurring sentiment I'm seeing from people who like this picture, that it has a lot of narrative and thematic overlap with the game Metal Gear Solid. A story about a specific weapon development spanning decades, about how war affects you, and how it psychologically and literally never ends, portrayed through the endless conflict of two men created through science specifically for this, and only this, with multiple side characters caught between them, down to how our hero is sent in as a last resort to single handedly defeat the enemy army held up inside an abandoned, snow covered facility when all other attempts to do so have failed. While this is obviously coincidental, I do think there's something to be said about the unconscious effect games seem to be having on movies, or at least how we're perceiving them. Either the last 30 minutes of this was specifically designed to be seen as a character moving through a level, taking out smaller enemies, and then facing two bosses, or the rules of video games have rewired us to read it in that language. Could go either way. I'd also like to draw attention to the lack of clarity as to what the Unisols actually are. They're reanimated corpses genetically modified and full of cybernetics that need to be cooled down in the first movie. But what these cybernetics are is never elaborated on. They have these weird goggle things bolted to their heads, but it's not clear what they do either. Probably so the red eye makes the poster look like Terminator, and in universe they're probably a targeting system, or to make the Unisols look less human and therefore more acceptable to the public. I really like this aspect of the series, that we don't really have a clear understanding of the makeup of these guys, like a T-800 or a Weyland Yutani android. It adds to the confusing and existential direction we're heading in that's only getting ramped up moving into Day of Reckoning. Like with Predator 2, Day of Reckoning is a sequel about showing how the military's actions in foreign countries are coming back to bite them in American cities. In this case, mistreated and discarded veterans are taking back their agency by preparing to wage a war on the US government, the titular Day of Reckoning. Luke and Andrew, who was probably cloned again following the events of the previous film, are now working together and undoing the brainwashing of their Unisol brothers to build up an army.
From this moment on, you will seek vengeance on your oppressors.
Like Regeneration, we're going to be following a couple of threads that will lead us to the third act. The Unisol army being assembled as a background element, with Magnus, played by the same actor as the NGU, Andrei Arlovsky, presumably also a clone, recently being freed from his brainwashing. and John, played by Scott fucking Atkins, who wants revenge on Luke for murdering his family and to find out why. Day of Reckoning trades up Regeneration's bleak, cold atmosphere for a weird, mysterious, experimental feeling, going full horror for some sequences and leaning even harder into the existential questions raised by the sci-fi elements. I also like how it doesn't talk down to us and doesn't stop to explain why Andrew and Magnus are alive and the larger plot taking place in the background. With context clues from the previous movie, we're well aware of the Unisol's clones and implanted memories. Director John Hyams of the original Smashing Machine documentary already dumped all the toys on the floor and now he's just playing with them. Same with how Luke is the leader and the face of the group, but it's Andrew actually doing all the organizing. He was the colonel in Vietnam after all. The lack of exposition also frees us up for some of the best to ever do it, engaging in some sick fights. The action is significantly more violent than the previous films owing to the shift in tone. Our hero, John, is eventually revealed to be a weeks old clone with implanted memories created by the government to kill the rogue Luke. His identity and sense of motivation are gone, with just the programming remaining. This is another pretty interesting joint line of meta thinking with Metal Gear, particularly the ideas of MGS2 and Phantom Pain.
Who am I really?
No one quite knows who or what they are. The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. That's never the point.
Like how Solid Snake and Big Boss are characters that you, Raiden, and Venom work together to play, of course John's motivation is made up. Of course he has no identity of his own. He's following a script, a pre-programmed idea as played by an actor. Our sense of action hero logic is played against us twice. First, by flipping Luke into the antagonist role, and second, by making John take revenge not for a real, tangible reason, but because, as the action hero, that's simply what he exists to do and he has no other purpose. In the fiction and in the meta. It even manages to flip the power of love and friendship common to this kind of story, even present in the original film, by having the government give John a fake dead family specifically to hate Luke when all previous attacks have resulted in Luke undoing the brainwashing. John kills Magnus, most of the other Unisols, and has the Resident Evil 4 knife fight with Andrew Scott, the most underrated actor of history versus the most underrated actor of today, killing him for the fourth time in 3 movies. He also, after another sick, gross fight, the most impressive physical performer of history versus the most impressive physical performer of today, succeeds in killing Luke, but only because Luke kind of allows him to. Whereas the original was playing off of Rambo and Terminator, Day of Reckoning instead feels like it's borrowing a lot from Apocalypse Now in its structure, particularly the third act and the conflict between Luke and the government. The plan and manipulations backfire as John becomes the new leader of the Unisols.
From here on out, you're Big Boss.
And starts replacing government agents with clones. Like Luke, Andrew, the NGU, and Magnus before him, John's life was never his own, and the film leaves it fairly morally ambiguous as to what this ending represents for him. Was Luke's final act freeing one last trapped soldier who can now take the fight further, or has he doomed John forever by setting him on a course for war?
There is no end. Always. Another John.
Is John even free? If he was programmed for vengeance on those who destroyed his family, surely this is a further extension of that. And with that, we fully transition from some sci-fi action trash into a cyberpunk neo-noir psychological nightmare. Universal Soldier: Day of Reckoning came out in 2012, and it is unlikely that there will be another film outside of a tacky, studio-safe reboot for brand name recognition. The Universal Soldier sequels are special. They're so weird and idiosyncratic and radical compared to how every other action and sci-fi series could only try and recreate itself. Unisol instead continuously reinvents itself, the kind of thing that could only be created with low budget and high energy and a lot of really good artists operating at peak performance, introducing new perspectives on its characters and ideas, doubling and tripling down instead of diluting, while keeping a constant plotline the whole way through. A dead, rotting corpse brought back to life with new ideas. It's unlikely we'll ever see Universal Soldier again, at least in a form we recognize anyway. But it's better to let this one go, and I hope Hollywood does too. I've seen how they follow up underrated sequels. I don't need 2028 Universal Soldier Resurrection, starring Jared Leto from Joker as Luke's son or something.